NLU Library Training for the LibApps E-Reserves System, presented on November 18, 2022 by Amy Lefeger, Associate Professor Librarian. This is a publicly available guide about the best practices for using the LibApps E-Reserve system. Everything in this guide is what I'm going to walk through in the training today, but it's a reference point for you to go back, including screenshots, walks you through everything. You have the menu on the left to see everything. But right now, the most important thing to know is that right at the very top of the page is the link to log into the LibApps system. And it also has a link for the eReserves public course list. I'm just going to click this so you can see what this looks like. This is where you'd want to go when you need to get a link to the course page that you've created to add into D2L. So this is all of the courses we have. You just click on the course name, and then now you're at the course page where you can just copy and paste that link. And this is the link to the external hosted page for the site. The eReserves information is from the LibGuides page. We do have multiple systems in LibApps, so this one is tied to our LibGuides system. And to access eReserves, you just click on Content and then scroll down the content page to eReserves. So now we're looking at the list of courses that are already in the system, and I'm just going to walk you through adding a course and adding items to that course. You'll see a couple different tabs across the top, but on the courses page is the default, and that's pretty much the main place where you will stay. So you just click the Add a Course. And you can copy a course. The only time you would really want to use this is if maybe you have a course that's running two different types. So if maybe you have a blended and you have an online, or maybe it's a 10-week and a 6-week version, and the readings are hosted in different modules that you might want to copy everything over and then edit that copied course. But the majority of times we're going to be just creating a new course. And so for here, the fields that we need to provide information is the course number, the course name, an instructor, and select a term. So those are the only things that need to have information and the only things that should have information. So the course number is just the course code and the number. So this one is going to be for BUS 430. The course name is the name that it appears on the course map or in the catalog. So this is Management and Leadership. The instructor name was just the 3-letter course code, because then that way all of the courses in one program could be viewed just by selecting the instructor from that public list. If you do not see the 3-letter course code already in the list, like I don't have a BUS code right now, all I have to do is click Add New Instructor, type that in. That's my new instructor. And the term, while it looks like you are selecting nothing, you are actually selecting this one that's a period. And I'll explain a little bit more about why this is necessary. This is something that we have to have a term in order to apply copyright status to the different items. And the problem is that this appears in the public display of the course. With the period, it is the least obtrusive character that we can assign as a term, since we're not having these with a start and end date. There's no actual assigned term necessary because these are the reading lists for our template courses. So that's why we've selected that one. So it looks like nothing, but it's really just a very tiny period. And then you click Save. So now you can see it appears, it just alphabetically, you can sort different ways as well. If you made a mistake and you need to change anything, you just click the gear icon to edit the course. That same screen comes up, and then you can make any changes you need. In order to begin adding items to the course, you can either click on the name of the course or you can click on the little edit widgets. It takes you to the same place. So now I am looking at the course page for the BUS 430 course. And the first thing you want to do is to know, like, how many modules is the course? And that's how we're going to structure the folders. So I'm going to say this is a 6-week course, so there's going to be 6 modules. And I'm going to just click the Manage Folders, click Add Folder. And I can call these folders whatever I want, but we want to make sure we're consistent with the naming conventions of what the modules are called in the course. So we have module 1, and I'm just going to quickly create 6 folders. And you can see I'm not doing anything other than adding the name. And once we have these all set up, then it makes it really easy to assign the items into the correct folder, because it'll appear as one of the options from the drop-down menu. If you haven't already created folders, then the items just get added in this empty field down just in the order that you enter them in. So now I have the structure of the course. And as soon as you create a course, then that course becomes publicly visible on the guide. So I'm just going to click back real quick so you can see now I have a BUS 430 course already listed on the public guide. So now that I have my folders, I need to start adding items. So we're going to pretend like this list of sources is something that's coming from the course map for the learning materials, where you're just going to be copying and pasting the information into the item. So this is what I'm going to be working from for my different items. And I'm going to show you a few different item types that you'll come across when you're working with courses. So in the course page, I just click Add Item, and you have an option to create a new item or reuse an existing item. I will show you both options. But for starters, we just want to get some items in here. So when you get the field, you have this item type over here, and where you select the type of item we're going to be adding. The first example I have is going to be an article. So I'm going to select article, and then you see this option of different fields that you can populate changes depending on what type of source you have selected. The name of the source is what appears to students when they just open the folder, expand the folder, and see the list of readings for that module. And what our best practice is that we take all of the information from a reference list entry, but do not include any links, because the link in the name is not a functional link, and it can just be confusing for students because it's not something they can click. And all we want to do is provide a good model of using APA in order to do that. So you just have your list of readings, you copy, you go back, and you paste into that field. There is a character limit. So if you find some of this information is cut off, like maybe you have an article with 20 authors, you can go back and edit the author's name to maybe remove and use et al. In place of some of them instead. But for the most part, I did not run into issues with having the full reference list entry minus the link added as the name of the field. You can add a description here. Most times you will not need to, but some SMEs might have a reading that's optional. So you could add that text into the description, and this appears below the item name. You want to make sure you provide the item URL. So this is what makes the clickable link. Okay, you can leave everything as no. Any resources coming from the library will already have the proxy as part of the URL. So it's just better to leave this no so you don't accidentally over assign. And then you can put it in a folder. So you can see all of my folder options I created are now listed. So I can select my folder I want to add it to. And then you just want to fill in this information. So it's pretty quick since you have the reference list entry. So I need the article title. So you're just going to copy. So location's not necessary. This is not a physical item people are finding. So you can leave this field blank for any item when you have an article. And then because it's like a couple numbers at the end, I always just copy them as a group, paste them into the volume, and then kind of spread them out as I see fit, depending on where they need to go. And taking out any extra stuff. So it's just the numbers that appear. All right, and then go ahead and say save. And now it looks like nothing happened, but if I expand module 1, I can see that item is there. When I click on the title, then this is a box similar to what the students see. And as you can see, they get that full reference list entry, and then right below that, a link to the item to link out to make sure that they can get to the resource. So that is an article. The next one I'm going to show you is a website article. So this is my website article. So I'm just going to copy that. Select add item. I'm going to create a new item. The website is the easiest. So you can see it's literally just the web page name. So I'm going to provide that information, get my link. So again, even though this is a web page article and the link is part of the reference list entry, we do not include that as the name. It's just the information to find the source, and the link goes in the item URL. I'm going to add this to module 1. And then just to make sure it's clear, I'm going to say the website where this information came from and put that in the website name. Okay, click save. So it automatically closes your folders you might have expanded, but now you can see I have 2 items. Since I have 2 in here now, you can see I have sort. So I can sort manually, meaning I can drag it around however I want, or I can sort by name, which would make it alphabetical. We've pretty much only ever done manual sorting just because the order of the readings is important to the SME, so it like builds on information. We want to just make sure it's as consistent as possible with what you see in the course map. Okay, so I'm going to keep adding items. So the next one I have is an ebook chapter. So for this one, book, ebook, or chapter, this one also has information where you can expand chapter level information and add that information in there. So I can say yes. I can also say that this is an ebook. If you say no to these, it's not a big deal. The students will not miss that information. But for our purposes, I want to try to be as accurate as possible with the information I'm providing. So I've just copied that reference list entry. I'm going to get that URL. Now, just for clarity, this ebook chapter, this is not an accurate reference list entry that you would put on your references page because this book has the same authors for the entire book. You wouldn't provide chapter level information. For our purposes, because this is for readings for students, we're kind of creating our own APA to include the chapter level information, including page numbers, just to make it very clear in the name where students need to go. We have several courses that utilize library ebooks as their textbook. So you'll have different chapters, but because we have the ability to link directly to that chapter starting page, you're going to want to create an item record for every individual chapter being read throughout the course, because that'll help the students be able to link directly into that specific chapter, just a better user experience for the students. And I'm going to assign this to just keep everything in module 1 for now, and then go through and provide the information for the ebook. So if this book had individual authors for each chapter, I could provide that here. So I would put the editor information in this higher level field, and then I would put the chapter author information in this field down below, since I said I wanted chapter info included. This one does not have individual authors for each chapter, but I can include this chapter title, and I can include the chapter page numbers, and go through and add the publisher. So pretty much the only information that you need to really worry about are the same things that you would want to include in a reference list entry. So you don't have to include the ISBN. You are welcome to if you have that information and you want to include it, but it's not information that's necessary for the students. And any fields that are not populated just don't appear. So you're not taking up real estate with information that students don't need or care about. It's just really the main information that they are interested in. I'm going to click save. So another instance of a book that you will find is a required textbook. So I have this example here where I don't have any link for it. And this is something where if it's not available, freely available online or available through the NLU library, then we're not going to put a link to the source. It's confusing for students if you're linking to like the publisher's website because it's not actually available to them. And instead, what we can do is we can put in the text of required textbook in the description. And if you want information to appear like the line below in the description, you just throw in a simple break for HTML code in this, not required, but if you feel the need to do that. And then you could say, okay, this is for module 1. My students are going to read this chapter. And then I can provide this directional information so they know this is a required textbook. They need to read chapter 1 with the page numbers. The amount of information provided by the SME may vary. Some might just only give you the chapter, like chapter 1, chapter 2. Some might provide everything. Some might just provide the page numbers. So whatever you have, since you don't physically have the textbook with you, most likely, you're just kind of have to go with what the SME says. If they need more information added, you can easily go back and edit items and add that to the description. I'm going to assign this to module 1, but there's nothing that goes in this item URL because there is no link to this actual item. Okay, so then I'm going to say save this. So now you see I have my print book, and so this is what the students would see. They have this required textbook, and you see that break made it to drop down there, and that also will appear in the folder list that students see with this descriptive text below that. So the reason I wanted to show this is because I only provided the whole book information. I did not provide chapter level information in this name, and I'm providing the chapter information in the description, which makes it really easy to say, okay, well, they have another chapter that they need to read in module 3. Rather than creating a new item, I'm going to reuse an existing item. And this is where you start to search for the first word in the item. So if you type that first author's last name, most likely it's pretty unique and you can find that information. I can click on that. And then I have the choice to either map to the original, which means it's just going to be the same thing copied over, or I can make a copy. The only time you would want to map to the original is if maybe you have a SME that wants a video in module 1, and then they want to revisit that same video in module 6. So then you could reuse that item like for like, and it'll appear in 2 modules, but only 1 item will be created. For my purposes, I actually want to make a copy of this item instead of mapping to the original, because I want to make some changes because I don't want them only reading chapter 1 the entire time. I want them to read other chapters in the book. So I've made a copy, and because I made a copy, I couldn't select where to save it. It ends up down in this area. And so this is where you can edit items. So this is true for any item. You have this little edit widget. If you make a mistake, if you leave something out, it's so easy to go back in and fix things. And in this case, since I made a copy, I want to say, okay, well, I don't want you to read chapter 1. So I'm just going to take this out and copy the information for module 3, which is to read chapter 6. But it saves you so much time because all you have to do is change that descriptive text, figure out what folder you want it in, and click save because everything else copied over for you. It's also helpful, like if you have an ebook and you're doing multiple chapters from that, you'll have to do a little more editing within the item record, but it can save you some of the main copying and pasting of all of the content and just have to change a few things like the chapter title and page numbers and then the item name. So I only have 2 more item types to demo. I'm going to do a YouTube video. It might be a little confusing because media is an option, but if you're finding videos online, freely available, YouTube, Vimeo, TED Talk videos, videos on other like Edutopia videos on their websites, you're going to select it as a website source, which also makes your life so much easier because again, it's all you have to provide on this site is just the website name. So I'm going to copy just the part without the URL, paste it into the name. For videos, a lot of SMEs want to have the runtime. It's also very helpful for students. So I just throw that into the description. So I'm just going to put this, I'll put this one in module 3 since I think module 3 is feeling lonely with only one item. And then we'll save that. The last item I have is from a library's database. So this is when you would actually select media as a choice. So I'm going to add this item, create a new item, and I'm going to select media. And this is giving new info, so I could actually provide the database name for the library. A lot of this you don't need, like the location, call number, that's not information that you need to provide. But those are the differences in videos, which can cause some confusion. If you select media and add the item as a media item, it's not a big deal. It doesn't impact our statistical information. It's just easier if you add a YouTube video as a website, as opposed to having to fill out all this additional information. But this way you can also provide the accuracy of knowing that it's a library database for students, like if they have any issues. And it also helps the library if somebody's having issues with it, that we can figure out where it's at. So I'm going to throw that one in module 3 as well. And then just go back to, say, put my title in.
So for our hosted Panopto videos, since that's not a library database, they do it as a URL, as with YouTube or Vimeo.
Yes. Yeah, that would make the most sense to me as to choose website for that kind of an item. For Panopto, if an external link would cause an error for students to be able to access the video, then we could, instead of providing a link, provide a description that it's available in your D2L course or something like that to be able to make it as clear to students as possible. So those are all of the items that I wanted to demo to you. I can show you really easily for sorting items. So say you're like, oh, well, I really want my required textbook to always be at the top. It's just a click and drag, and then it sorts it for you and it saves that sort. So this is the nice thing, that like I changed this here. If this was already embedded in a D2L course, then that order would just automatically be updated. So any changes you make in the system to the items will then be reflected in the live version of the course that the students would be accessing. Once you've created and added all your items for the course, obviously you can go through, we have in our best practices, we always recommend you go and check every link to make sure that they're working properly, which I'm sure is a very similar best practice you have when you're creating the course content, to make sure everything's working like it's supposed to. There is another step that we have, which is to manage copyright. And so this is displaying the copyright information just for this course. So these are all the new items. There is no copyright status here yet because I have not assigned it to that. The different types of copyright status that we have are created by us, so we can have them say whatever we want. In order to add copyright status, we just click this link. The default's unassigned if you don't have it. And these are the item types we have right now. So one we could add, for example, for the Panopto video would be available in D2L or D2L content that we could assign as a copyright status, since it's not a required textbook or anything. And this is not anything that the students see. This is something that can help us from from gathering like how many courses are using library resources in their courses, how many library resources are being used throughout the whole system. We right now don't have any items with the copyright permission required, but that could be used for readings where we're hosting PDFs for courses that are not available full text either online or through the library, and then we have to pay permission costs. So that's a quick way for us to be able to identify those readings to make sure we're continually paying copyright permission every year. So if there is a copyright status you would like to see that we don't have, we can easily assign that. And so what I like to do from this is like you just get the name information, so it might not always be clear where this is from. So you might need to check back on your list to say, okay, well, this is from the NLU library database. So I'm just going to click that, click save. Refreshes that page, and then you see the copyright status appears. So I'm just going to go ahead and quickly assign the copyright to the rest of these. So the nice thing about doing the manage copyright from the course is because you're only looking at your particular course that you've just added, and it really quickly updates that information. You can go back and look at the copyright for all items. It can be a little overwhelming. So I'm going to click back to the edit course. So that would be the manage copyright step. And so basically, if we can pretend that I have added items for all 6 modules and everything is ready to roll, and I now need to provide the information to, if I'm a librarian, I need to provide this to the BAB group instructional designer. If you're the LXD team member that's created this information, then this is the next step you need to take in order to get this information into your course. So this is actually something outside of the E-Reserve system. It's from our tools menu where you can create widgets. So you click on widgets and it defaults to guides. You just have to make sure you select the course tab. And then you can get the embed code for the course. Select the course. Annoyingly, it's just the course name. So you have to remember what your course. So I did management and leadership. It doesn't do the course code. I wish it did. So that's just something to be mindful of. It defaults to simple, but you need to do framed because we're doing the iframe. And you can see here in my preview window that I have a scroll box here. We do not want the scroll bar to appear in our widget when all the folders are closed. So you have to adjust the height. This is a requirement. It defaults to 250. Ram and I went through and determined that for a 6 module course, we have to set this height for 750. I click update. That update updates that information in the code. It also updates this preview. So now you can see, I can see all 6 modules and there's no scroll bar. So now I have the embed code I need in order to put that into my course. So what I have in D2L, this is just a sample learning materials template page. Your team is going to have to decide what you want this to look like in the long run. But what I did is I just added this placeholder text here. Ram and I were discussing different ways to be able to connect the module learning outcome with the reading for Equality Matters. What we thought would be most helpful is we have this helper text directing students to the specific module folder. We have the external link, which would need to be updated for whatever course you're doing to update that with the public course list. And then we put the module learning outcomes at the bottom of the page. So I'm going to go ahead and edit the HTML because all I need to do is just insert this widget. So I'm going to scroll down to that placeholder text. And I did have to put this in here. If I didn't have it in here, then it did all sorts of crazy things by trying to embed it within one of these boxes. It looked terrible. Once I added just this little section with this placeholder text, I could highlight it, go to insert stuff, enter the embed code, paste the embed code, say next. You can always trust if you want. It's just D2L being secure and say insert. And now you can see that information appears in there. Save and close. And then you would just need to go through the different modules to update like, okay, we're going to read module 2 and module 2. And then you would just need to update the module learning outcomes to whatever the SME had identified to the module learning outcomes. But it's pretty easy to get all those readings added in there. That was the last step I had for demoing from start to finish. I'm just going to go back to the best practices guide just so you can see how this is structured. So we start off with just the general information, steps on creating course. Under adding items, there is a general, like this is how you add items, but then I also have created a subpage for different item types. So it breaks down with examples for each type of item, what information you need to populate with the example. If items don't have it, like say you have an article with no issue number, you just leave it blank. It's not a big deal. And then I also on on the adding items page at the very bottom, and these are all links that can jump you down. I have APA reference list examples for different types of sources. So I have a template and then an example source below that, so you can see different types of sources. I have this like same author for a book chapter, but same author for the entire book, with this caveat about how this is what you put on a references page, but works for our purposes. Videos on YouTube, videos on the TED website. I love this example because it is the same video. It's just available in 2 different places, and you cite it differently depending on if you found it on YouTube or if you found it on the TED website. And then another one that we come across is if you're citing a help and research guide. So we have examples of that, links to our video tutorials, and OWL at Purdue if you need a little refresher in APA. So that's some other helper resources as well. And the final thing is, which I'm not going to demo how to do because this is something really that the librarians would need to do, is that we can connect e-reserves with a LibGuide if there's like a program level guide. So there's an MBA and a DBA guide that were created that we can connect these e-reserve pages so that guide is linked on the public page. So these are the steps for the librarians to do. And that's why it says if a SME wants this done, it's not required to do, then you can contact the library and we can very easily update that information so it appears. And where you would see this on our e-reserve course list, so I can go into the DBA course, it appears only if you're on the external course list. So it's not something that's embedded. The iframe is only embedding this list of module folders, but this is where that would appear in our related guides page. So that is the e-reserve system. Contact the NLU library with questions. Email library@nl.edu.